Hello everyone, back to our latest Star Wars video. So Disney have announced future projects, not just Star Wars, but a whole load of future projects that they're going to be investing in over the next few years. And the news for Star Wars, though, is that Star Wars, after the Rise of Skywalker, which is going to be released at the end of the year, is going on a 3-year break. It's going to have a 3-year hiatus where they concentrate on new material, and the next Star Wars film after Rise of Skywalker will not be released until the end of 2022, and that's the start of a trilogy of films that's going to be released 2022, 2024, and 2026. So we're going to have a bit of a break from Star Wars from the end of the year. And I think it's a much needed break as well after everything that's been going on lately. Anyway, I'm going to talk you through the article in a moment. We're at IGN.com, and I'll tell you what Disney has said about upcoming Star Wars projects very soon. Just say that if you're enjoying the content on the channel, then please like, share, and subscribe, and let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing through the comments. So the headline is 3 Star Wars movies being released starting in 2022, piece by Colin Stevens. And it says, following the conclusion of the Skywalker saga, Disney will release 3 new Star Wars films in 2022. Announced by Disney, each new film will be released on the pre-Christmas weekend every other year beginning in 2022, meaning a new Star Wars film will come out in 2022, 2024 and 2026. These films have not yet been titled, but will definitely exist outside of the 9 numbered Skywalker saga films. So it's going to be new material, focusing on new characters, and it won't be a continuation, really, of the Skywalker saga. The only upcoming Star Wars film we know for certain will be released is The Rise of Skywalker, which is coming to US theatres on December 20th, 2019, and the UK on December the 19th, 2019. Now, there should be a new paragraph there, but they continue for some reason with this piece. But this is now going on and talking about the 3 scheduled films starting 2022. So who was it who wrote the piece? It's Colin Stevens. So Colin, you need to know where to end your paragraphs and where to start new paragraphs. Anyway, it says it's possible all 3 of these films are part of The Last Jedi director Rian Johnson's planned trilogy of Star Wars movies, which Johnson confirmed he was still working on as recently as February 2019. There's also the Star Wars project from D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, the executive producers and showrunners of Game of Thrones, which rumours suggest could take place during the Old Republic. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy confirmed in April 2019 that the duo and Rian Johnson are involved in plotting out the next Star Wars saga. The 3-year break between The Rise of Skywalker and the 2022 film appears to constitute the Star Wars hiatus Disney CEO Bob Iger referenced in April. And one last little bit. There are other rumoured Star Wars movies that have been floating around Lucasfilm since the Disney acquisition, including a potential Obi-Wan Kenobi film. For more on these projects, check out every new Star Wars movie and show in development. Right, so what do we make of the news that Star Wars will be having a hiatus for 3 years and that it's will be returning in 2022 with the first of a new trilogy? So I would say it's good news that Star Wars is going to have a break. I think it's in need of a break after the disappointment that is the sequel trilogy. Certainly disappointment in terms of the fan response to it. Anyway, critics love it, and it has been very profitable. So from that side, from business side, I suppose, it's been okay. But from a creative, artistic side, it's been very, very disappointing. and it's left a lot of really unhappy fans in its wake. And although we don't know yet how the Rise of Skywalker is going to turn out, I mean, we're just hoping at this point that it can rectify some of the damage and end the Skywalker saga, at least for the time being, on on a relatively positive note. But I think any expectation that this sequel trilogy is going to make sense, or is going to be anything that's a classic sort of trilogy of films in the way that the original trilogy was, I think that is dead, really, dead on arrival. The best we can hope for is that we're going to come out of The Rise of Skywalker and say, well, okay, at least we got one decent film out of the three. But that said, I think they do need a break, therefore. They need to recalibrate. I think they need to have a reset. And so I think taking their time to consider what they want to do next, and it's really what they should have done with the sequel trilogy, actually. They brought the sequel trilogy from George Lucas in 2012. They was often running out of the blocks so quickly, trying to develop episode 7, which subsequently became The Force Awakens. And I don't think anybody really gave any thought to either that film on its own terms or the trilogy of films that they wanted to create. So they already have that date for the end of 2015 sort of penciled in almost as soon as they brought Lucasfilm and the rights to Star Wars, which was a big mistake. They should have spent much more time mapping out and plotting and thinking about the sequel trilogy. So I think the fact that now they are planning to take a bit of time to sort of consider what they want to do with this new trilogy of films, I think that is the right thing to do. And also it will take a little bit of time for the anger that's been caused by the sequel trilogy to simmer down. So I think that allows things to cool off. And also, of course, in that 3 years they can start then considering replacing some personnel. I think top of that is going to be probably Kathleen Kennedy. I think she'll be moving on quite quickly. 2022 is an interesting year because that'll be exactly 10 years since Kathleen Kennedy became president of Lucasfilm, and also Lucasfilm and the rights to Star Wars was sold to Disney. So it's an interesting year, 2022. I would imagine that by the end of that year, Kathleen will be moved on. She may oversee the first of this slated trilogy, but I think they'll be moving her along the Disney chain by 2022. 10 years is a really good run as president of Lucasfilm, and I think by the end of 2022, when this film comes out, she will probably be moved along the chain, and I think it probably all change at Lucasfilm by that point. But as far as this trilogy is concerned, well, we don't know anything about it whatsoever. We do know that, as it says in the piece, we've got Rian Johnson creating a trilogy of films, supposedly, after The Last Jedi. I've always been very dubious about whether we would see a Rian Johnson trilogy, I have to say. But up to February, he was apparently still working on it anyway. And then we've got the Benioff and Weiss Game of Thrones duo creating some sort of trilogy that we think is Old Republic, but has not been confirmed. And the last thing with that, as it says in the piece, is that Kathleen Kennedy was going to get Rian Johnson and Benioff and Weiss together this month. I thought it was going to be in April probably, or perhaps this month in May. But anyway, very shortly they're going to be coming together, and they're going to be sitting down and plotting out the new trilogy, which is interesting because it sounded to me, when Kathleen Kennedy said that, it sounded like they kind of like merging what Rian Johnson is going to do with the Benioff and Weiss duo. My speculation about what's happening with this is that possibly Rian Johnson will do a trilogy of films, might not be the trilogy of films that he was originally expecting to do, and he may have Benioff and Weiss overseeing him. Remember, it says in the piece that Benioff and Weiss are executive producers and showrunners on Game of Thrones, so then perhaps going to be a little bit more in an overseeing type role. That's the role that Kathleen Kennedy has been doing up to this point, of course, as president of Lucasfilm, and making a hash of it, I have to say, creating all sorts of problems, especially been falling out with directors and writers, and people have been coming and going from projects, and projects been going billions of dollars over budget, all of that stuff that we know about. That's kind of what Kathleen Kennedy has been doing. Makes me wonder whether Benioff and Weiss are going to be overseeing this trilogy and overseeing Rian Johnson. So, yes, Rian Johnson will get to do another set of films, or at least one more within a trilogy. But you're going to have Benioff and Weiss sort of overseeing what he's doing, and that possibly allows Disney to have people involved who actually know how to create, in their case, a really good, well-plotted series. Bring those sort of qualities to the film, because that is something that Star Wars has been so badly lacking with this sequel trilogy. No plotting, no thought, no planning, nobody overseeing the creative development, the creative process to make sure that the sequel trilogy comes out as one whole, if you like, and also connects back to the original 6 films that George Lucas created. So I just wonder whether, yes, maybe Rian Johnson will still be the director on this, at least the first one anyway. But whether he's going to have Benioff and Weiss sort of overseeing what he's doing in the role that Kathleen Kennedy should have had with the sequel trilogy, but she has neglected her role, possibly because she's not particularly a creative person. I do wonder how much creativity Kathleen Kennedy has. We know she's had a long association with Frank Marshall, who of course she's married to, and Steven Spielberg, but in that association, how creative has she been within that association with Frank Marshall and with Steven Spielberg? I wonder how creative she is. It's possible she's more of a bean counter. Possible she sort of does the financial side of things, and she's less involved, or has up to this point been less involved in the creative process. But if that's true, why did George Lucas sort of have her in this role as president of Lucasfilm in a moment? She may be a very good businesswoman, but is she a creative person? The evidence that we've seen in terms of the sequel trilogy suggests no, she probably isn't. So if they are going to bring in Benioff and Weiss, who, let's face it, have created a juggernaut with Game of Thrones, and one thing you can say about them is that they have sort of created a well-plotted and very popular series of in terms of Game of Thrones. Just makes you wonder whether they are going to be the overseers with Rian Johnson's trilogy of films, and whether the trilogy of films that Rian Johnson thought he was going to do, and Kathleen Kennedy and Disney said, yes, you can do another set of films around the time that The Last Jedi was released, whether he'll be doing the films that he expected to do. So questions, we should wait and see. And it is possible, of course, that Rian won't take particularly kindly if he does have Benioff and Weiss overseeing what he's doing, and if they sort of come to a conclusion, along with Kathleen and Bob Iger, whether they come to the conclusion that the project he wanted to do, whether that project won't be going ahead, and they're going to do the other thing as well. So kind of like merging the Game of Thrones duo's project with Rian Johnson's project, merging the two projects into one, if you like. If that happens, it's possible Rian might say, I'm out, I don't want to be involved in this. Rian might walk away. So they're not going to let him go as such, they're not going to fire him, but he might find that his position is untenable, and then of course Benioff and Weiss will be looking for new directors to direct the trilogy of films that they're overseeing, or they might decide to direct themselves. We shall see, but I think a break for Star Wars at this point, certainly when the Rise of Skywalker is done and dusted, I think a break is welcome. I think everybody needs it. Everybody needs to sit down, sort of think about what they're doing, take a deep breath, and we need to see some personnel changes within Lucasfilm as well, I think. Right, if you enjoyed the video, then please like, share and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll be back with more Star Wars content very, very soon. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.